I like the beginning of the article that you sent me. It says, "Here is how platforms die." The idea itself, and we all know it, but I didn't know there was a word for it. I thought you were swearing at me first. I was reading about it last night, going through some of the articles that we found, and I thought it was interesting that this fits a good dozen or better sites that just popped in my head. Everyone from Amazon to TikTok to, really a ton of sites that actually fit into this definition.
I would actually suggest that it's all of them in one way or another. They're in this spectrum, and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to see where they are, but it all comes down to incentive and what are you actually trying to accomplish and how do you make people reliant upon you is really the key. And from everything from Amazon to Uber to Stack Overflow to Reddit to Twitter to think of any platform you can think of, and they go through this same cycle.
Yeah.
It's just where are they on the curve and who are they trying to woo at any particular point in time? And how much weight do they have on the scales? Is always the interesting part. And I don't think we've actually called out the term, but the term is actually called enshitification, which I think is a super interesting term. And it goes all the way back to, I can't remember.
January 21st, 2023 was when the essay was published.
There you go.
From Doctorow's, the gentleman who did that, Cory Doctorow. The funny thing is it's not the first time he used that formation of building the word. I had also found out that he used it in later in another article called Enshitternet, when he was talking about the old good internet and then what the internet is today. So it's in shitternet, and we're now talking about enshitification. So he has a theme, and it's a good theme. People have jumped on and started to understand really, kind of what this is and what it means, because it's a consistent pattern. Like you said, we're seeing it in multiple locations. So the term itself kind of can be defined as platform decay, right? A phenomenon where the quality of service provided by online platforms gradually degrades, often due to promoting advertisements, sponsored content, or implementing user-unfriendly features in lieu of increasing profits. So now we're thinking about profits of the organization over the actual functionality we're providing to our customers.
Well, I would actually say that it's you're delaying profits.
In the beginning,
yes. And, you're really just playing the long game and you're giving up a lot.
It's kind of like stocks, right? We're investing. You're doing a certain type of thing in the beginning to end up with a certain outcome at the end, knowing what outcome you're after, even though no one else knows.
Well, let's talk about the three kind of phases of it. So if you're going to build a platform, what are you really trying to do? And in the end, you're trying to connect your producers and consumers, and you're the middleman as the platform creator. Well, how do you, what is the first thing that you actually want to do with the platform? Well, you have to have people,
right?
You have to have a consumer base. And so what do? You start to market to them. You start to give them free stuff. You start to all of those kinds of things. And I think there's a bunch of good examples of that, but to me, the best one is Uber.
Okay.
And Uber, raised a ton of money, and it's my understanding, fact check, is they were taking a lot of the money that they were raising and they were actually subsidizing rides. And, yes. And I know that to be true. I just don't know the actual facts behind it, and you think about that and you're like, a lot of people would say, why would they actually do that? Well, they want to get people away from whatever it is that they currently do. And that's hard. getting people, like the incumbent is always hard to overthrow, no matter how terrible they are. And you see that a lot in politics. People are like, well, yeah, but why? We keep electing the same terrible person. Well, it's because there's so much momentum behind that it's hard to get away from.
Yep.
And so from an Uber perspective, what were you actually trying to do? You want to get people to stop, hailing a cab in New York or calling a cab in other cities. And you want to get them to start using the app, the Uber app. And you've got to break that muscle memory and build the people to actually do it. And that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, it's habits, right? We're doing micro habits, little changes that end up having big changes long term, and building out new habits. Because now, you and I talked about it the other day. I was in Vegas and I went to take an Uber ride. Now, Uber was $40 to $60 to go from the hotel I was at for the conference to the airport. The cab was still like $12. Yeah. And if you didn't bother to check, you were spending 5 times the cost, Instead, we started taking cabs because the cabs were cheaper and just as fast and did a great job. But now we have the habit of when we travel for work, we automatically think just grab an Uber, grab a Lyft.
That's right. And I remember the first time I took an Uber, it was from an airport down, and I think it was in Jackson, Mississippi, but I don't know if that's correct. Might have been Memphis. It doesn't matter. But I was, I took a cab down from the airport to the office, and it was like $85.
Wow.
And I took an Uber from the office back, and it was like $40. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, how is this? Like, and the thing that pops into your head at that point, and I remember, it's the cab companies are screwing me over.
Right.
Well, that's actually not what was happening. What was happening is they were subsidizing that $40 of that cab ride to make it look like it was cheap.
Right.
And they know from a psychology perspective that I'm going to go, my goodness gracious, not only is Uber cheaper, but the cab company is screwing me over. And that's where a psychological shift happens of not only, I feel slighted. All the other times that I took a cab, I got screwed over.
Yeah. Then you get angry. You want to get even.
That's right. And once you can do that with enough people and you can gather all of those people, all of a sudden you now have a group of people that not only are using your product, but if you've done it correctly, they don't even look for other people, like you said. Like, have you actually looked at the price of a cab?
And most people haven't, right?
Have you looked at the price of a car? Like, I remember back when we used to travel, this wasn't that long ago, 2015, 16, 17? Yep. I used to rent a car all the time.
True.
And it would be like, oh yeah, it's, $60 a day or $50 a day. Be there for 4 or 5 days. It'll cost a couple $100. And that was in like New York City. Well, now you're paying $110 to take the ride from LaGuardia down to the city. And now all of a sudden, within 2 rides, you've now blown the budget for what it would take to rent a car.
Yeah, 100%.
Or to take a cab.
I was doing monthly rentals for a car in Cincinnati for one project, and the monthly rental ended up being $100 and something, $200 for the entire month for the car. That we didn't even turn it back in. You just left it at the airport and came back and got it when you flew back the next Monday. And that was cheaper than any Uber ride.
Yeah. Well, and now you've gotten where everything has just gotten crazy expensive. And, there was in the one article there, they were talking about on Amazon, and, you've built all of this stuff into Amazon, and now it's like 90% of people don't even look elsewhere. They just go look on Amazon.
Right.
And now Amazon knows that. And so they can increase prices. They can charge higher fees to sellers. They can do all of that because they know they have the market.
Yep. Well, the interesting thing on that is I was thinking about Seth Godin because he talks about building communities. And that's what this did, right? Because you like you said, they offer subsidized rides. They attracted all the early adopters. They started building out a community. Then the cool thing is you start building out evangelists. So everybody talked about how great, Uber was and Lyft was. And that started building a larger community to the point that no one looks around, no one argues, no one complains. And now they tell you, because they're evangelists, now people are going to tell you you're crazy because you're not using it.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And, and that's just on the buyer side.
Right.
So now look at the seller side or the producer side, say the consumer side. Now look at the producer side. If you go think about like Uber in that example, you need people, you need drivers.
Right.
And so what were they doing at the early days of Uber? It was also, hey, we'll give you a $500, $1,000, $1,500 sign-on bonus to come drive with us. We'll give you X amount of dollars per mile. And like, it looked really great. I mean, you could make, and honestly, you still kind of can, you can make a decent amount of money driving for Uber.
Right.
And, so you had to woo those people in as well. And, or like take Amazon, it's, hey, we're going to give you free shipping. We're going to give you logistics. We're going to give you all of these things as a seller. Like, do you not want to box up all of your stuff and then have to drive it to the post office or have UPS pick it up or whatever? We can do all of this stuff for you and we're not going to charge you a lot of money. And it becomes easy. And then as you start to build the buyer base, it's, oh, look at all these people we're bringing to you. And they start destroying all of the other sellers. And now all of a sudden they can go to the sellers and say, hey, look, like 90% of people just come right to us. They don't even go look elsewhere. And now we can sell to you. Well, that sounds good at first, but then what happens? And this is where really the enshitification starts coming, is now they start tightening the screws on people.
Right.
Now they go to the seller and say, hey, we were helping you out, but now, look at all these people, and they start jacking up fees. They start charging more of, finder's fees. Like there's some sellers on Amazon that are paying 45, 50%.
Yeah. Just to be
of the total price of something to Amazon for them to sell it.
Right. But the customer, as you said, is getting hurt by that. It's interesting in that Amazon is the one that I think of. I mean, Uber and Lyft and stuff also are really good examples. Amazon came to mind for me, especially since I just bought that camera I showed you a minute ago. And the first thing I did with the camera, even though I knew that it was a Nikon camera, I'll go to the Nikon website. I also went to Amazon to see what the reviews were. So to your point, I by default go there. But the experience of shopping on there for a camera is horrible. It's not like it was years ago. Like the quality of the search, the quality of the results, the information on there and the trust of that, to believe if I'm buying it from Amazon with trust that I'm not getting a refurbished product, I'm not getting a broken product, right? I don't have that trust anymore because the site, one, doesn't give it, and two, the fine print on who's actually selling it and everything else on there is kind of fine print. I bought recently another product that failed and I ended up losing money on. Even though I returned it and got another one, it was just as bad. I did under counter lighting, and it was from a company out in China. It was a good price. It wasn't really expensive, so I guess I get what I pay for. But I bought them. I put them in. They worked for a week and a half, and then they started failing. I returned them. The first set I returned, I bought 4. The first 2 I returned, they sent me 2 new ones. I put those up, and then they failed. So I got my money back, but I didn't really get my money back. They only give me the gift card, right? So I got those back. The other 2, they replaced for me. Then they wouldn't let me return them, and they just failed, and I threw them out. So I ended up losing money on that. There's no deal or benefit from any of that, right? Just frustration. And the customer service now compared to before was very different. In the past, if I bought something and it was under a certain dollar value, they don't make you return it. Yeah. It's just like, whatever, we'll write that off. And that was very nice. Also, the replacement, or at least the trust in what you were buying, so you didn't have to worry about replacing or returning. That's degraded. Just thinking, there's a couple. The only thing I am happy with somewhat is the return policies itself. I can still go to the UPS store down the road, or what is it, Kohl's, I think by me also does it.
They do Kohl's, UPS store.
Yeah.
I think even Whole Foods.
Oh yeah, Whole Foods does it now too. So that's nice. They've kept that. But on the other side of that is when you return now, they're trying harder to keep the money in house, which as a retailer, again, I don't blame them for that. But as a customer, you want your money back. If you're returning something, you want your money back. You don't want to be forced to have to go back to Amazon and shop. Maybe you want to use that money to go buy it somewhere else, or to buy something else.
You can actually get it returned back, but the UX that they have is, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it.
Correct.
Because it automatically highlights basically an Amazon card, but then below it in smaller font, not a button, just text.
Yep.
It's like, other return options. And then you have to click like 3 or 4 more times to actually get it back to your initial payment.
The fine print. It's all the little fine print.
That's right. But to me, all of this stuff really is it's why you end up having these problems, because Amazon used to care about you as a buyer. And I'm not going to say that they don't anymore, but they don't care as much because they know you're hooked.
It doesn't show in the actions from the way that they're running the company through the website we see, from what we see today, right?
And they know you're hooked. They know that the sellers don't really have any other platform that they can go sell into.
Right.
Or at least that they can sell into that provides the thing that Amazon provides. So they know that they can squeeze both of you, from whether it's the return process, whether it's the buying process, whether it's really any of those. They don't have to make it any better. And actually, will make it worse, because that's how they're going to make more and more and more money.
Right. Well, and they do it in many different areas. And this is not just them. We're using Amazon for an example, but I've had this on other sites too. Delivery. So how are you finding delivery for you? Because again, it's something that pops in my mind, because I ordered my camera from my favorite store down in New York City, B&H. Who doesn't like B&H Photo? I ordered it last night at like 4 or 5 o'clock at night. Decided, you know what? I'm buying myself a gift. We're getting a camera, and I bought the camera. It showed up this morning. I wasn't even out of my pajamas yet. The thing's at my door at 8:30, 9 o'clock this morning. Yeah. Now, that's overnight service. Like, that's what Amazon used to do that I don't see happening today, theoretical today.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing that Amazon has actually done is they've made people feel like shipping should always be free, regardless of what it is. Like,
yes.
And that is one of the biggest, I know personally, I've dealt with some of this stuff where I bought my truck recently, and I have like a bed rack that's on top of it. And I bought it from a smaller company, and they were going to charge me like $200 to ship it. And I was like, well, what do you mean $200 to ship it? Like, this is crazy. And, but in the end, they're probably almost taking a loss at shipping it from Arizona to St. Louis in these gigantic boxes. Like, right. It's not cheap, but Amazon's made everybody believe that it doesn't cost anything to ship from one place to another, to another, to another.
Correct. And I agree with that. And it is a bad habit that's come out of this, right? It's a bad perception, because everything does cost to do that. But that started before Amazon, I think, too. We've been trying to find ways to gain customers by hiding shipping and handling into other fees, into the cost of the product, different ways, so that we could start offering that. Amazon just got really good at it, and then started, spearheading that in all of their marketing and the website and everything else. And then they own that. Now we think of that from them. I mean, they are a logistics company before they were a marketplace, and they're good at logistics.
Well, and that's the thing that allows them to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, they have Amazon Air. They have all of these things. They have all of these distribution centers. They're not paying a supply chain to do all of these things.
Right.
They're doing it all themselves. And if they were paying some other supply chain people, you'd be adding 20, 30, 40% at 10 different stops along that supply chain. And that's what it makes things really expensive. And if you can own that entire supply chain, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, the United States Postal Service works for them now,
Basically.
Yeah.
And, the funny thing is some of that stuff goes all the way back to like Henry Ford and, the building of the Model T. He wanted to own his entire supply chain because he knew that's how he was going to be able to build affordable cars for the working man.
Yep.
And all the way down to I don't know if he had purchased or he was close to it, but he had some coal mines, I believe, in West Virginia. And then he was trying to actually even build or buy his own rail company to supply all of that to his factories up north. And, it was pretty interesting how, the real popular charcoal company. What is it?
Not, what's the?
I want to say Bridgestone, but that's
I know what you're
tire
thinking,
company. Right? But that's actually the company that he started.
Kingsford.
So that actually came from him and how he was actually trying to build his own factories. And that's the company that he started that then changed into Kingsford.
Okay. Yeah, my understanding on a whole really cool topic was that's a byproduct of actually the manufacturing process. And then they figured out instead of just throwing it out and paying to get rid of it, that they can make charcoal and then resell the byproduct that was coming out of the other process. So it was reusing the byproduct and actually making it into something useful again.
I believe that is true. But what he was really trying to do was power his factories with coal. And then I do believe that was a byproduct that then turned into these other things.
Turned into a business. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It makes a difference. But the thing is that's being ingenuitive. That's outstanding. That's what we should be doing if you're running an organization, is right, finding the best way to put these things together and be profitable so the organization can be profitable. The thing that we're calling out here, just to circle us back a little bit, is with the enshitification, is the fact that at some point the rules in the organization are changing in a way that maybe not someone directly saying it, but someone indirectly implying that we need to make more revenue. We need to grow our bottom line. So do what you have to do that, which then puts more advertisements on the site. It charges more money to the vendors. It reduces a focus on customer satisfaction and just increases it on profit, which then, to your point, reduces the effectiveness or the features that you give to your customer, making angry customers. But then, like you said, they're locked in. So they don't feel like they can go anywhere. And it isn't until we see another company come along that can disrupt it. So, like for Amazon, we have that. What was that new one that I keep seeing now coming from China?
Temu?
Temu. Yeah.
Temu.
Yep.
Well, let's go to Temu here in a second. But one other thing to note about Amazon, and here's actually a really good example. If you go and look up a basic thing, and I believe in this one article they call that a dog bed. The whole, if you're on your mobile, the whole first screen is nothing but promoted content.
Okay.
And even partially into the second screen, it's all promoted content. So what's happening is if you're a consumer that wants to buy a dog bed, it's not actually showing you what the best dog bed might be. It's showing you the dog beds that people were willing to pay the most to show you from a seller perspective.
Paid placement.
And so it goes down to what you said earlier was search is way worse because it's all promoted content. And so from a buyer perspective, I am not getting shown the best. I'm getting shown what the platform is going to gain the most from getting my eyes in front of it. And from a seller perspective, if I want to sell a dog bed, I basically have to pay to get my content out there, or no one's ever going to go to page 3.
Right.
Unless they're searching for, my content specifically. And another interesting, weird side note about Amazon. Do you know the reason why there's so many weird names for Amazon products that you don't find anywhere else?
No.
It's because Amazon's, if you're going to be a seller on Amazon, you have to have a trademark name. And so what's the easiest way? So if you're going through the trademark process,
right,
you have to be able to show that the name that you have is not widely used and is not, there's more to it than that, but that's basically it. Okay. It's, this isn't used anywhere else out in the market. And so, the easiest way to do that is to come up with things that make no sense.
Right. Make it so unique that there's no chance someone else has created that and is using it somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I bought a cheap sleeping bag off of Amazon. This was like 6 months ago. And the name of it was Soul Out. And it's like, I don't know if I really care for my soul leaving my body, but like that was the name of it. And the reasoning is because if you go, like, I don't have the stats sitting in front of me, but if you look at the rise of Amazon and the rise of trademark requests to the federal government, they correlate. They absolutely correspond. And it's because of the requirement from Amazon that says, well, this has to be a legitimate brand.
Right.
And when they started it, the law of unintended consequences, like when they started it, they wanted to have actual name brand stuff. Well, what they actually caused was a whole bunch of crappy side brands to just create trademarked names that can then sell on Amazon.
Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't know that. That's interesting, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
The problem with a lot of that we see is like you said earlier, and we both said, is the trust in those products. Cause now they're just people putting together quick little shops, putting a shop on Amazon and trying to sell their stuff. You have other companies doing this too. So I don't want to pick on Amazon because like Walmart has Walmart Marketplace. So they went from I'm buying from Walmart to I'm buying from anyone. Like you don't know who's on there. Temu, who we just mentioned earlier, I mean, it's the same thing. It's a marketplace. It's not one company anymore. It's just it's instead of walking around the mall, you're basically just doing it digitally. And the format is good, but the growth and the changes in that format is kind of what we're talking about.
Well, and here's the, like, to take a shift back to enshitification. The reason why Temu exists is because Wish.com turned to shit.
Right.
And AliExpress turned to shit.
Right.
And there's this whole chain of other like cheap Chinese garbage platforms that have fallen to the wayside. And Temu is the thing now, but in less than a year, probably it's not going to be.
Correct.
Because
they're all following the same model. They're doing the same format. It's now a business model.
Yeah. I need to go get people by selling cheap stuff. I already have sellers that need to sell stuff and give them a path. People then realize that all of this stuff's garbage and then nobody comes here anymore.
Right. But you have a certain time frame in there where you can make a ton of money.
That's right.
And then you kill it and you go create another one and you just put a new name on it. You do it again. And
that's exactly right.
It's a business model now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so I know we've talked a lot about buyers and sellers, but like the same thing's happening on things like TikTok or YouTube.
Social media side, right? Okay.
Social media side. And so like, it's a little bit different, but it's also the same in some ways, from that perspective. Like, I know we've talked about YouTube a little bit here. Like, I think both of us, that's our primary source of, kind of content when it comes to, I just want to go watch something.
Right.
And we all kind of complain about the algorithm, Like if if you go anywhere, you'll hear somebody complain about the YouTube algorithm if they're in any kind of content creation.
Yep.
But the more I've looked at this and the more I've thought about it, I don't know if it's just the algorithm. It's how much do they have a finger on it? And, like I'm not going to point this one at YouTube, but I will at TikTok. And inside of that article we were talking about, they talk about how TikTok has this, what they call heating, which, they're trying to woo certain content creators, and they basically funnel more things to them to give them a boost in numbers very quickly.
Right.
And then it makes them believe, oh, wow, like look at all this engagement that I can get here. Look at the money that I can make here. Look at all of this stuff that I can make here. And yet, once they get to a certain spot, once they get that content creator hooked, then they turn that heating off. And now all of a sudden it becomes harder and harder for that person to be able to, for their content to get out there.
Right.
Even for people that have asked for that content. And, the reasoning why is they have somebody else to go woo.
Right. And they
have other people that. Go ahead.
So sorry, I was agreeing with you. Yeah, because it allows them to keep refreshing the faces. So it's always something new for the person watching. So they don't get hooked on just watching one person like it was your favorite TV show. They want to keep giving you new inputs, new things to see. So they have you hooked looking, and then you're going to try to find the old person you liked watching, but we're also going to give you a ton of the new people, and it just keeps that cycle moving.
That's right. Yeah. They, we don't know exactly how it's working, but I've heard from other podcasts I listen to in other places where TikTok is like the greatest place. You can go in there and you can start to create content and you're going to get tons and tons and tons of views. Well, I think that they've got, there's somehow your time there and the number of content that you've created automatically turns on this heating cycle,
right? Until
it gets you hooked, and then it starts to cool off. And then what's the interesting thing that they want to do? Oh, well, pay for content, pay for advertising, pay for other things. And, that's when you can start to get these people involved. Now the other side of the TikTok comes in with all of the advertisements. And it's like, you've got this person hooked. You've now given them a little bit of an audience. Now you can either sell more ads or you get that creator to buy more stuff.
Right. Well, it makes sense because a lot of these sites are looking to push young people into building passive income. They sell it very much on the idea of passive income, which isn't passive at all. You have to work very hard to make passive income. But
we're both very well aware how hard content creation can be and how little people can care.
Exactly, right? And as a marketing technique, I give them credit for it. I mean, it's an outstanding model in itself. It's just it's not really ethical. And the idea of saying, okay, you're really trying to make money online. I'm going to help you to get all your viewers so that you make a certain amount of income from that. It might not be a lot, but you're making something. You make $100 and you're going to be ecstatic if you're a young kid and you got no money, right? All of a sudden you got $100 coming in because you wrote these articles or you made these TikTok videos, or now you're hooked, to your point. Now I turn down the heat from what you said. And once I turn down the heating, now I'm going to ask you to pay some of that money back so that you get advertising, so you maintain your audience, so you don't lose your money. But now we're back to a more traditional pay-per-click kind of idea, which I did for my jewelry store a lifetime ago when I had it online. Is the only way, like you said, the only way I could get on the front page is I paid per click for all the primary tags to find the jewelry that I was selling. And it worked great when I was paying. It was a couple $1,000 a month I was paying for advertising. Now I got the traffic I wanted from it, but I had to pay to get that traffic. As soon as I turned it off, everybody disappeared.
That's right.
Night and day, I had tested it, and I had months with no real revenue to turning it back on and having months with ton of revenue. But it required me to have to pay to play on the search engines, basically, because at that time it was mainly the search engines. Mm-hmm. So now this is saying if you want to play on TikTok, for example, you have to pay.
Well, to go back, I'm not on TikTok, so I can't speak to it. But
I've tried it several times. I keep deleting it because it's extremely too addictive.
It is, and it's funny how TikTok's everywhere else, but it's not allowed in China.
Correct.
But going back to China,
but I thought China was playing different content.
Well, it's a very different platform in China.
They use it to actually teach and inspire their kids to be creative and grow and learn new things. It's kind of like their, a YouTube kind of idea on steroids, right? Teach something. And here it's the opposite.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The interesting stat that I found on YouTube is 80% of the people on YouTube watch 0.77% of the creators. So less than 1% of the creators get 80% of the content.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And, and it goes to show like, how do you, like on YouTube, it's hard to rise above that to get almost any users. And there was kind of a chart there. It's like, of the people that get, 1,000 to 5,000 views and then kind of up over 1 million. It's just that the numbers are strikingly small.
Yeah. That's for most platforms are like that, I think too, though. Yeah,
that's right. The other interesting place where this all plays out as well, and I think honestly is the most nefarious, is in the dating world. And looking at, things like Tinder or the million other,
dating apps
that are out there. I don't even know the names of them anymore. But, you get, it's like, it's so lopsided from like a man to woman perspective that, a man comes on there, creates a profile, will get some level of views, will get some level of connections. And, they have that heating period. Oh, look at all the things that you could have. Right. And then it dies off. And then it's, pay $10 a month, $15 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month. And, and they'll just slowly start turning on the trickle. And it's, really, really sucks the money out of people. And it's pretty sad as far as I see it.
Yeah. I saw that firsthand when I had got divorced. I tried one of the apps, and I remember that you got your first month free, and they showed me all these, great profiles per se. A lot of it was misinformation, and it was a bunch of people with fake profiles, really, but they were trying to give me a ton. And then I said, okay, I'll pay for 1 month, and I'll try and see if this thing's even useful. And then I turn it on. I pay for the month, and it immediately starts going downhill after about halfway through it. So like they gave me, okay, get me hooked. I paid. Now it's getting crappy and it's getting worse. And the recommendations of people you're giving me are getting worse. And I'm like, okay, I see what this is. And quickly canceled and got off. But you could see that it was clear as day if you were paying attention. But if you weren't, I could see where you would just get desperate and keep paying money. And like, there's got to be somebody,
Yeah.
But it goes back to what we said before too. It's a focus on how the organization is making decisions for how it's going to treat its customer compared to how it's looking at its investors or its bottom line.
That's right. And they generally want to play the longer game to pull it all together. And it's unfortunate. We talked a lot about the problems. I spent a few minutes talking about the possible solutions, and I honestly don't know what the solutions are. Like I threw that out there, but in the end, a lot of these companies are, going to continue down this road, and they just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse. To me, it usually comes down to competition. There's almost no competition in this space. It's become so difficult or even impossible to get away from some of these companies that you can't even create a competitor. Like if you were going to create a competitor to, Amazon, what are you going to use? AWS? Are you going to use Google? Are you going to how are you actually going do some of that is pretty fascinating.
Or is it more of a cycle in itself? And like, I looked at all those sites for my camera, but I went back to the theoretical mom and pop, and I went back to the supplier. I went right back to B&H, but I would have bought from Nikon, but Nikon tells you to go buy from B&H, right? So I went and bought from B&H directly, and they did an outstanding job. Like I said, it was to my house in a couple hours. Granted, New York City's an hour away, but still, every time I order, perfect service, great products, and they come right to me. Like, why would I want to buy that from Amazon, Temu, or anybody else? It doesn't make sense. Maybe it's a cycling that has to happen, and I don't know how that would or wouldn't happen. I guess people would have to get so frustrated, but where stores start putting their own websites up for themselves and people start going back and buying directly, again, the problems become the supply chain. There's several problems. Supply chain probably the biggest in it, but the only way in my mind I could see fixing this really is changing the cycle for the growth of what it is, because the only thing I see happening now is companies like Temu and Alibaba and all of those, which are the same bad business model, just giving you another version of the same thing. It's not making it better. It's just giving you another version of it. And that other version of it is still just looking to make money. So it's not making it better in any way. It's actually making it worse, because they're probably going to find companies that are making even crappier products, selling us worse things. I opened up Temu while we were talking to take a look at it. And right on the front page, under the 90% off, I saw those same under-counter lights that I bought that were crap on Amazon. And they're selling on Temu, and they're $7 each, which is really cheap because they're 90% off sale right now. And they probably will work exactly the same. So I'd be paying $7 for 2 weeks of light under the counter.
And the funny thing is my wife buys stuff from Temu all the time.
Yeah.
And some of it's good and some of it's absolute junk, but you never know what you're going to get. But their return policy is great. Like, a lot of that stuff's actually pretty great because they're at the beginning of the cycle, not at the end.
Right. So they're taking care of you through the return policies and such. So it makes sense, if you're going to test it now.
Yeah. Yep. To me, the biggest issue is just how big these companies have become and how much they own. And, to go back to they are absolutely, like in Amazon, especially, like, you own everything from soup to nuts across this whole thing, including AWS underneath the hood that runs this entire thing. There's no way anybody in the world could ever do it cheaper. You own the entire process and can look at the entire process and say, okay, well, I want to get X amount of margin off of this. And that's I don't know if we'll get away from that at this point, but I do know that I shop less and less on Amazon.
I agree.
Like, I still get a ton of stuff from Amazon. So, like, I'm not going to stand here like high and mighty, but here I have bought more and more things from smaller companies than I have over the past couple of years.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that. I think I agree with that point. Just thinking about it, I do buy a lot from Amazon still, but not like I used to. But yeah, again, not for any ethical reason or anything else. I actually think I stop most of the time because of the search and because of the interface. And now there's so much and conflicting information that I can't find what I'm looking for. I'm unsure which one to buy. So now I have analysis paralysis. And I get to the point where I want something, but there's so many different things on there, and I don't know who the seller is. I'm not sure if that's a good price. I'm not sure, to the point that I go, hey, never mind, I'll close the browser window. I don't have time for this. It was a 5-minute thing I wanted to get. I had 5 minutes to look. This is going to require more time. Okay, never mind. I'm out. The funny thing that as we were just talking, that I just realized is I've actually started to use Google as the search mechanism. And then when I find what I want, then I'll go search Amazon to see if it's on there. Yeah. And do it the other direction. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. I think that ends up being, I wonder how many people actually do it that way now. It's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I found that to be more useful because I can actually look Because I found Amazon has less and less name brands as well.
Yes.
Where it's almost all just some weird name garbage. We're finding like the, name brand things is harder and harder to do.
Right. Well, they make more money that way, right? So if they sell it under their name, or if they sell it from a smaller mom and pop shop, and then they up the price, right? They're going to increase their revenue. So again, they're making more money selling these things that you don't know what they are, because they can push around those vendors more so than they can go push around the big name vendors.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was an interesting topic, and I did definitely like the word. The word caught my ear, caught my brain when you had said it. I thought it was great.
I do too. It's pretty fascinating. And, once you kind of understand this process, you start to see it everywhere.
Yes. Yep. So I guess we have to thank Cory Doctorow here, who did the original article on it and came up with the word. His website's pretty cool. I looked at his website too. He is a nonfiction author, a science fiction author, and also writes on some of this stuff. So it was good stuff.
Good for him. Yeah, this was pretty cool.
All right, my friend. Well, I think we can call this one. I think this was a good day. I appreciate the conversation.
As always, man. Cheers.
Oh, cheers.